if protein is involved in every one of the processes that our body's ever going to do, then it's important that we have the best quality, healthiest protein available for our body. Protein is one of the macronutrients that we need to eat to survive. The most common action of protein that you hear me talk about is building and repairing the body. And our body will constantly build and repair, and that's in order to keep us as healthy as it possibly can. And there are certain circumstances where your body's going to need more protein. So for example, if you're pregnant or if you have an injury or if you're suffering some kind of illness. So the other reason for protein in the body are enzymes. So enzymes allow chemical reactions to happen. For example, breaking down food, so digestion, making energy, healing our body, so healing cuts and problems that are happening internally, and of course, contracting our muscles so that we can do stuff. The third thing that I can talk about is hormones. They're another type of protein that relay information back and forth, communicate within the body. We're often talking about insulin. That's the hormone that tells our body when to store fat, for example. It does other things. There are different types of hormones that are involved in the regulation of sugar, as I just said, the regulation of growth of our body, the regulation of our sleep-wake cycles. Our sex hormones regulate, for example, expression of our sexuality, and also it regulates like when our body goes into puberty. Now, honestly, I know that there's many more actions that proteins have in the body. I'm not going to go into all of the deeper things that proteins do because, first of all, I'm not a doctor. And second of all, it's not particularly relevant to what I want to talk about today. I just wanted to give you the 3 top major things that we often talk about so that you understand why I focus so much on how much protein I eat, but also focus on the quality of the protein that I eat. If protein is involved in every one of the processes that our body's ever going to do, then it's important that we have the best quality, healthiest protein available for our body. While I was doing this research, there was always this long list of things that technical and complicated about what protein does. It would always, at some point in the article, in the research, give this one little, and by the way, protein can be used by the body as energy if it needs to. Or, by the way, the body doesn't prefer to use it as energy. The reason I'm bringing this up is because so often we see that they try to make us believe that protein is the other energy source, and that's not the case. When I was doing my research and they were talking about protein, it was very clear that although protein can be used as energy if we are in difficulty, or can be used by the body as energy in very specific situations, the majority of the time the body will use carbohydrates and fats. There are 20 amino acids that make up our body's protein, and we can actually make 11 out of the 20. So there is really 9 that we need to eat to get into our diet. So those essential amino acids that they're often talking about, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy are considered complete proteins because they give us all 9 of these essential amino acids. So the macronutrient makeup of animal protein is that somewhere between 22 and 30 grams of protein per 100 grams of food. And when we're talking about eggs, it's 12.6 grams of protein for every 100 grams of food. When we're looking at plant protein, there are some plants that actually give us complete proteins, and those are the only ones I'm going to talk about today because I want to try to keep this balanced. And of these plant proteins, the ones that are giving us the complete protein, as you can see, spirulina, which is a type of algae, is giving us the best bang for the buck, I would say, with 100 grams of spirulina giving us 58 grams of protein. It comes in a powder, and it comes in a pill form. So it makes me think that, because I couldn't seem to find it in a regular shape, like the algae from the sea, people don't seem to eat it that way. Maybe there's somewhere in the world that they do, but in North America, this seems to be the format that you can get it in. If there's another way to get it, actually, I'd be very curious to know, because I like eating things that are whole foods. As we're looking at this, what we're seeing is that hemp seeds, 32 grams of protein for 100 grams, chia seeds, 16.5. So you're getting a good amount of protein. However, I need us to understand that it's coming along with quite a bit of carb. So hemp seeds, for that 100 grams, you're going to get about 8 grams, 9 grams of carb in there. Chia seeds, you're going to get 42 grams of carb. Spirulina, you're getting 25 grams of carb. So the best options that I see there put the average person trying to do keto over their numbers. There are other foods, and the carb count, though, was always quite high. Now, I haven't, and I'm not going to talk a lot about protein powders and processed protein because, in my opinion, processed foods are too quickly absorbed, and manufacturers tend to manipulate us when they create processed foods, processed proteins. They use the cheapest quality food they can and sell it to us as if it's the most beneficial type of food we can eat. And so for that reason, I would rather talk about real foods, whole foods that you can buy in the grocery store and feed your body appropriately. So now the question is it possible as a vegetarian to get all the protein that you need to be healthy? And apparently the answer is yes. Is it possible to do a healthy vegetarian keto diet? So for me to get all the protein that I need and to keep my carbs under 20 grams, if I consider eggs as vegetarian, then I'm going to say I could do it. I would be able to eat what I needed to eat. I want to put some perspective on this, though. To get half of my 90 grams of protein from eggs, I'd have to eat like 9 eggs every day. Is that doable? For me, it is, because I don't mind eating the same thing every day, so I would do it. But that's a lot of eggs, and then I still have to try to get the other half from vegetables. Now, if I went, I can go higher, though. I can do 75% from eggs. I could even do 100% from eggs and then allow some veg for variety. The point that I'm trying to make here is that even if I wanted to use spirulina, the carb count is so high that I wouldn't be comfortable. Remember that if I get to 18 in my carb count, I start having pain and inflammation, and it's not good. These are things that we need to think about if we're going to try to have a vegetarian keto diet. And I would love to be able to, if anyone knows a way to do it, if there's a food that I'm missing, please put it in the comments below, because I would like to know how. And I've heard people talk about being vegetarian keto so often. How are you keeping your carb count under 20 while getting all the protein that you need? So for me, I need 90 minimum, 90 grams of protein. That's not counting the food I'm eating. That's just the grams of protein I need to get out of the food. I would love to know how people make that happen. What we've learned is that meat is the source of protein that provides the least amount of carb to the diet. What we already knew is that sugar causes our insulin to rise. And high insulin causes our body to store carbs away as fat. In the presence of high insulin, when the body is in storage mode, we also need to understand, and I learned this from Dr. Fung, I believe, that anything that is present while my body is storing sugar away as fat also gets stored. So if I'm eating protein, if I'm eating, right? So because my body is trying to lower all of this energy that's come in. The protein that you would have gotten from the plants is much more likely to be stored because it's coming in with all of this sugar. And I want us to keep in mind that that's not limited to plant protein. If I eat, for example, a steak, but I have rice and potatoes and everything with that, while I'm eating a high carb meal, chances are some of that protein is also getting stored. It's very tricky to try to keep all of this straight, right? But what that means to me is that protein that I get from vegetables is likely to be stored because it comes packaged with so much carbohydrate. And then when we decide to put those carbs on our plate, we have to consider that our threshold is what causes us to be in that fat storage mode. So if I already have insulin resistance, my threshold for carbohydrates is already low. So then if I'm getting a lot of my protein along with carbohydrates already are a 10 on 10 when it comes to increasing insulin and causing us to go into storage mode. But then when we add to that the fact that it's the only source of protein coming into my body, what is that doing to my health? What is that doing to the protein that I'm supposed to be using to build and repair? I often hear people blaming the fact that we overeat protein as the reason that we store it, but many keto doctors have clarified that when we eat protein alone, Even if we eat a lot of it, somehow we tend to be able to use it and we don't convert it over to sugar and start using it for energy. But when we eat it excessively, so like when we actually eat it, like overeat it. So now I'm not talking about just eating a lot of it. I'm talking about eating it to the point where it's too much for my body to handle. Then it becomes used as energy. And the other way that they say that we use it for energy is when we eat it alongside carbohydrates. This is something that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about the food we choose to put on our plate. And if we're making that plate, you have to make the meat, in my opinion. And again, I'm telling you what works for me because I've been doing this. I make the meat the center of attention. My bowls look more like the top plate. It's like if there's veg, it's a little bit of veg. And then when I do have my large salads, it's still a large amount of meat. This is not even a good representation of what my salads look like. I would still say there's probably too much vegetation in that salad. My salads are usually like half and half. And again, the reason is that what we really need and what we're trying to accomplish is to have good quality protein to build and fuel the body. So if we understand that the vegetation you put on your plate is there more for entertainment because you're getting all the building blocks, you're getting the protein from the meat with all the amino acid profile that you're trying to attain, the meat, the fish, the eggs. You're also getting quality energy because you're getting the fat that comes along with that protein. And it's, again, also giving you a quality building block because fat is a building block. Then we do start to see that vegetation it's entertaining for us to have there because it keeps the meal a little different, but it's not necessary. So if you're doing healthy keto and you're no longer snacking, so there's no veg between meals, then you have a higher possibility of being healthy if you keep the vegetation on your plate lower. So the higher you allow the carb count to be, the more likely you are to store that protein away. And that means that your body will desperately need to make you go out and eat more. And then if you're eating more, you're going to gain weight. And if you're not allowing your body access to that protein that you're eating, the internal structures that you're building are not going to be as healthy as you want them to be. The internal structures that you're building are not going to be as strong as you want them to be. Your body's not going to be able to do the repairs that it needs to do as often as it needs to do them because when we eat, the more we eat, the less opportunity our body has to do repairs. So it means slower weight loss. It means delayed internal repairs, and that means prolonged metabolic issues. I know that. I live them. My knees, my elbows, my back hurt me for years before I figured all of this out. And I only figured it out because my hip issue was excruciating. So, Wellness Warriors, I want you to improve your health. And that means getting enough protein, right? Tell me how you're going to ensure going forward that you're eating complete proteins. What's the plan? Especially if you're vegetarian, what's the plan? How are you going to make sure that you get enough essential amino acids that your body can repair and build and make sure that you're the strongest possible version of yourself that you can be? And remember that we need to have a healthy body if we want to lose weight. If we want to lose fat especially, we can't lose it if we're not healthy. I lost 70 pounds, right, doing this. So I have a video that I'm going to link here that tells you the 3 tips that I used to lose that 70 pounds. And the best source of protein for our body turns out to be animal protein because it's the least likely to cause metabolic issues.